So before we can get started in Mecanim, we would first need to import our animations. So when I first made them in Blender, I wrote down exactly where each clip would start and each clip would end. So now I'm simply going to take these numbers and I'm going to bring them into the animation settings for our Blockman model. So I'm going to go into our project directory, choose Blockman, and before I go into the animations directory, I will need to choose my type of rig. Now, Unity allows for three: legacy, generic, and humanoid. Legacy is the animation system that came before Unity 4, and it is before Mecanim. You can probably still find some uses for it, but if you're planning on animating your avatar, you would want to choose either generic or humanoid. Difference between the two. So, generic is the rig, and the rig can still be applied and be used with the features of Mecanim. Humanoid allows for something a little bit more sophisticated. You can take the animations that I have for Blockman and you can actually retarget it to another model. Considering we are hacking our way through this game, we're just going to stick with generic. Okay, so make sure import animation is checked. And now within these clips, I'm going to type in the beginning and the end of each walk cycle. If you're getting this alert here, the clip range is outside of the range of the source tag, that's fine. It means that some of the animations are going outside of the limits of what the range of the animations that you brought in. So simply click clamp range and you will see the start and the end of the clip become editable. Okay, so let's first start with our idle animation. We're going from 10 to 29. I'm going to call this idle. And we can see also the preview here. Let's take a look. Okay, seems like we have a pretty good cycle. We don't have to click apply yet. We're going to import the other animations as well. Okay, let's do a walk cycle. Walk is from 30 to 39. Let's see. Okay. Jump. 42, 52. And lastly, turn. Turn. 53 through 63. Once again, I'm taking all of these numbers from a list that I wrote down when I made the animations in Blender. Okay. Now, we'll just leave most of these options as checked, except you will see one up here that says loop time. Some of them we want them to loop, and some of them we do not. So the jump one remains triggered by a jump button, so we do not need it to be looped because you would jump once and you do not need to continue jumping. So click apply. Okay, now let's create the animator controller. So in the assets file menu, click create, scroll down to animator controller. And we'll just name this. You can name it anything, but I will name it in reference to our Blockman, so we will remember where it is. Now, in the hierarchy, you can see that there is a field missing for the controller in the animator. Because we brought in the rig, because we have the rig set to currently generic, we can, or if it was humanoid, it will be the same. We can apply the animator controller onto this reference field. Now, to actually edit the Mecanim states, we can do this with two ways. We can either double click this, or if you do not see this field, you can go to Window and Animator. Okay, so we have our series of animations which are going to be found in the project directory under your model, and now we want to bring them in order to transfer them from one cycle to another. So currently this is set to a nim. This is, I guess it didn't type in. This is meant to be idle. So let's reapply it. Okay. Now we can drag this in. You can see once I drag this in, it will automatically pick it up as the animation. So this is idle animation. And this is going to be the default. Everything is going to be leading back to this unless I set something that's called a blend state, which I will show you in 1 minute. So before I do this, I want to describe what is actually going on here. This is called a finite state machine, a term Unity borrows from computer science, meaning that there's only one state this system can be in, unless it could be triggered by some sort of condition. So in the case of Unity, it allows it to have several conditions with either booleans, int, floats, or triggers. So we will get to this next, but first let's bring in our animations. We have our walk. So let's bring that in. Our jump. And our turn. Okay, now we could connect this here and we will do so in just a moment, but first we want to set up a system so when the character is moving, he can also turn and he can do two actions at the same time. He can blend between two motions at once. To do so, right-click on the clip, choose Create New Blend Tree in State. Okay, you can see that this is going to take us to another menu within this hierarchy here between the base layer and the blend tree. Just double click. Now we have a list of motions here, and we have this fader here as well. Now I'll explain what these motions are, but first let's set up something that will drive one motion to another. So this is what will actually trigger our movement forward, and another variable is going to be triggering our movement from side to side. So let's set up both of them. I will have one, it's going to be called rotation, and the second one, float. So again, translation. Okay, we're going to be adding other ones, but so far we'll start with these ones. And now we need to add in some motions. Add motion field. And at first we're going to be dragging on the turn and then the walk. Now you can have the turns onto different sides and you can drag this from one to another, but we're only going to be needing two of them because our walk does not go, we do not have a walk back cycle, and our turn only goes to one direction. Typically you would want to have both walking back and turning to the left and turning to the right. In our case, to save time, we're simply recycling the same animation. So let's drag them in. Jump, walk, and we'll need a second one. I'll turn. Okay. So you can see that there's going to be a blend. These animations are going to intersect where one will blend onto the other. So upon 0, the character is going to be walking, and upon 1, the character is going to be turning. Based on what? The parameter rotation. And this parameter we're going to be triggering through a script. Okay, so that's fine. We've set this up. As you can see, we have a rotation field here. Now we don't have a preview, and to get a preview, we simply drag in our model. And you can see it will go from one to the other. If we play this, okay, and then the character is turning, and you can see that there's something in between here. Of course, this isn't the best animation. Hopefully you can do something better than this block man, but for this tutorial, this is perfectly fine. Okay, that's fine. Stop moving. Okay, let's go back to the base layer. So we have this walk cycle, but how can we actually trigger this walk cycle? Well, we'll trigger it based on a condition. And this condition, so to walk, we'll be moving from one point to another. In the 3D terminology, this will be called a translation, so we would need to set up a translation condition. Make transition by right-clicking, connect it to walk, and now you will see a conditions list here in the inspector when you click on this arrow. It says exit time, so by the time the animation gets to a certain effect in this 68%, then it will merge back to from the idle state to the walk states because the arrow is going idle to walk. Now, we do not want this. We want the idle to keep cycling over and over, and we only want the walk cycle to be triggered once we press the W key or the forward key on the keyboard. So let's change that. I'm going to be saying translation. It's going to be greater than 0.1. That's going to be triggered. So now that we're walking, how do we set that back to idle once we stop pressing that button? I'm going to create another transition, right-click, make transition, drag that back to idle, click on the arrow, conditions, translation. We're going to say less than 0.1. Okay, so we have this, and now we're going to need a turn motion because the character is not, we have this blend tree here, and the character is going to be blending from walk to turn because there's not a direct connection from walk to turn, so the walking will be blended in from one another. But you should also be able to turn just by pressing the right or left or A and D keys, so the character will not have to move simultaneously. So let's set up the same condition as we used in the blend tree here, rotation. The condition is going to be rotation. Same logic, greater than 0.1, idle to turn. Right click, make transition, back to idle. Rotation, less than 0.1. Okay, and we have that set up. Now we are going to need to be triggering a jump function as well. To trigger a jump, we're going to be pressing the jump key in the project settings. So if you haven't taken a look at the previous tutorial, it's going to be under Edit, Project Settings, and then Input. And we can see once we scroll down, there's going to be a jump function. In our case, it's space, but the user will actually be able to customize that in the once you compile the game. Okay, don't need this anymore. Now, for all of this, we'll need to set up another Boolean because jump is a on and off state. So let's add a boolean for jumping. I'm just going to call it jump. Now from idle to the jump, we're going to set the condition as a boolean jump to true. Now on the return condition from jump, we're not going to be setting that as a boolean. We're going to set it as exit time. Why? Well, for a jump, we do not always know when a character is going to be on the ground or on the floor. Typically, you would want this to be set as two variables, whether the character is jumping up or falling, or whether the character is in the air. Now, to simplify the logic here, because this is a hack, we would want this to just play out. So once it plays out halfway, it's going to be transferring back to idle.